Well, looks like I'm here again. I'm going to tell the people in Facebook. There, you got me picking my teeth on the chip. There's anybody there. Well, it's okay. I'm going to try to talk for a couple hours again. About Tiendo and the level above human, and well, let me put up my screen. That's a little different screen. No, not that one. That one. For now. My big advertisement that I give away my book digitally. Excuse me. So far the video is working okay. Oh, bad videos. Please use a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. I guess I better write that down. It ends up, I think it ends up still working. You know, I can't watch these. I don't have the time to watch them. So I don't even know what's happening with the video. I mean, I see it changing, you know. Sometimes it loses it and it just gets locked in one spot, but I know people can still hear me, and that's what really counts, because most of the time I'm not putting anything on the screen. Well, unless I'm doing the scripture talks. So I guess I should, you know, I said I'd go back into Daniel, but I guess if you all have any questions at this point, maybe your people that return from previously listening to some of these broadcasts, and cause I really don't. I've done so much, you know, just preaching, just by talking about everything, and I get tired of doing that. So I'd rather see what's on somebody else's mind. But I guess I should have a program in mind if I'm going to do that. So let me talk about this. When I was writing my book, and I was getting ready to publish it. Well, it took me 15 years to write it, and most of that was wasted time. And anyway, but I ended up, as I was writing it, watching prophecy unfold. And prophecy, to be thinking in terms of things being prophetic is not an accurate way of thinking about it anymore. Because we attach mysticism to that automatically, I think. Maybe everybody doesn't, but I do. And religiosity, of course. And the religions are they're like outdated. They were right for when they started, but then it wasn't long after that that they became distorted and diluted from what the original founder taught, whether that founder was someone named Jesus, or Moses, or Elijah, or Enoch, or Adam, or Buddha, Gautama Buddha, or maybe Krishna, because that means Christ. I mean, it even sounds the same. Which actually means anointed one. It means that somebody has a job that's approved by their captain, their older member, or their admiral. Like Doe said that he was like an admiral, and he was like a captain. And that's where the term archangel comes from. An archangel is actually a captain of angels, or actually better spoken today, a captain of crew members on the spaceship Heaven. I know that's been, probably used. I know people use things like that. The next level spacecrafts, the physical bodies that they grow, of all shapes and sizes and colorations. So while I was writing this book, and what I was trying to get to, and watching prophecy unfold, it was so much. It was like, see, the next level knows what they're going to do ahead of time when certain stages happen on the Earth during the project. So they can give that information to somebody, just like the way humans can, look at the whole world of an ant farm, and you know exactly where the limitations are, and where they can and cannot go. Not that ants is the best comparison in terms of kingdom levels. It's not. It's human kingdom is the kingdom above animal, and I guess an ant would be considered a type of animal, even though it's not a mammal. It's it's an insect, but I don't know. Whatever you classify it different, I know. I'm not versed in that, but because Tian Do called humans in the human kingdom. They compared them, they said the next level would compare them to the way humans have relationships with horses. That's the gap in the difference between next level members and humans. And so that what they're doing is they're rounding up, they're actually capturing wild horses when they come to Earth with their soul bodies, and they take a human body and a human body they prepared ahead of time, and take it over, wake it up at a certain point, and then use that vehicle as a tool to deliver the next step in the astronaut training program. And to be on one of their spacecrafts, working as a crew member, doing tasks like, I've said this many times, but I never know when there's somebody new coming along. So, like taking water from one planet to another, and that can be a task that's done by an individual that is actually using an entire spacecraft as their physical body. So it's the soul, like piloting the whale in a silly sense, because I don't think they have whales that fly around, but I could be wrong about that. They might have something equivalent to that because they've grown biologically, according to Tian Do, on a vine. That's where the idea came from for the umbilical cord, I think. They've been doing stuff for we don't have the ability to count how long they've existed, because our whole time is based on the Earth cycle. And it doesn't exist in other places. So that's why they're from eternity, because they always exist, because they outgrew the human kingdom. I'm not talking about space aliens, the ones that are equivalent to humans living on different planets. That's where the space aliens originally came from. They're not space aliens anymore because they can't go back. They can't go very far away from the Earth, according to Do. And I began to, as I was studying Scripture, because I hadn't hardly looked at Scripture before I joined. Well, before I joined with Tian Do, very little, tiny bit. When I was younger, when I was like 19 or 20, probably more like 19, but then when I joined with Tian Do, since they weren't really putting it up front that they were the two witnesses, but it was implied in their first statement, and they told us it, in our first meetings, I guess. I don't remember actually when they first said that they were the two witnesses, because they didn't like really identifying themselves as biblical figures. They remember when they were living in their lives in the Houston and Corpus Christi area, that when they would come across somebody that would say that they're like the reincarnation of Cleopatra, they would notice that there was more than one person coming back as Cleopatra. and they didn't, and they would want to run the other way from that person. So it wasn't, it wasn't something that they really enjoyed receiving when they realized that their task was talked about in Revelation chapter 11 of the two witnesses. And that was in Gold Beach, Oregon, in 1974. About maybe 6 months after they left their lives behind. So, okay, I've got some familiar handles here. Yes, hi, hello to both Ben and Cub Dodge, 1981. Okay, definitely I can guarantee what's in the Bible is not exactly what Jesus said. If he existed, time dilutes everything. I think I know the answer from what I've researched, but I'd love to hear your view. Is it possible for people today to reach the next level? If no, what happens when we die? When we die, we just go into the spirit world. The spirit goes, and the body goes wherever it goes, back to the dust of the earth, in one form or another. And the spirit just continues to want to interface with human bodies. That's what it's programmed to do. That's where it came from. It grew from the human body, even though it wasn't the origin of that spirit. Because the origin of that spirit is all along the branch of that spiritual network that is of all the other humans that lived in the past. All had spirit growing in their bodies that left. And so they all follow their interests and their relationships. They follow family lines, and they help. Sometimes they help, and sometimes they hinder. Depends on what kind of a person they were while they were living. And help or hinder, relative to what humans are wanting in their lives, and not wanting. And so that then becomes the basis of our so when they're actually literally maybe even in us, I'm not sure about that, whether I suspect that they can go inside of us through our breath, because they're in the air and our frequency. Maybe not all as much as they are. It depends on how much they've grown, because the spirits are all different. Even though they may have lived the same amount of years, they can have more experience than somebody else with more different things, or it doesn't matter what it is. It's whatever it is they have experience with, that becomes their specialty. And so that's what they vibrate on the most, and so that's what they pass on, potentially, to a vehicle in the human kingdom that is has that genetic propensity to interface with it electronically. Like a port, it's like, maybe even the 7 chakras are like ports, because Tiendo didn't teach in Hindu or even Christian terminology. But Tiendo taught that that we could trust every the records of what Jesus said in the four Gospels. He felt like that Jesus' students were taking notes, some of them, and there was proof that Matthew, the tax collector, was well taught in language, and probably Greek, because there was a mixture of Greek and Hebrew that was called, I forget now what it was called. Yeah, so I'll just let it go. But yeah, time does dilute things, of course, and we see the evidence of that right now. It's happening with the Heaven's Gate story. It's diluting, and now it's going into, to some degree, it's going into mainstream, at least with the rappers in the web, which I know aren't necessarily mainstream because, you know, they have blatant sexuality and you know, things that, you know, wouldn't go over on the mainstream media, and but certainly on the internet media, Heaven's Gate is mentioned all the time now because of Lil Uzi Vert and how he started using the artwork on the Heaven's Gate webpage, and then putting his own words in place of words, but kind of matching what those words were saying. Talking about like him being with his father instead of Doe being with T. T was Doe's father or older member. Actually, it was their terminology. They sometimes said the word father because that's our history. That's our the souls that were returning. That's their they have that in their heads, in their souls, because the souls actually save information. The spirits are saving information too, but a soul is designed to save next level information. So that's the remembering of. So what we were doing actually, when I was caught like a fish by Tiendo and their information that I felt was true, what was happening is as I was actually. My spirit was actually stepping aside and being cooperative to allow a soul's mind to come into this vehicle's, to merge with this vehicle's mind, to go into the different vase pocket, the pocket or balloon that comes out of the human vehicle. Two balloons come out of the human vehicle. That one is that holds the spirit, the mind, equivalent word, and spirit actually came from the word breath, and also is referred to as the soul sometimes, even though there's another word that looks like it's more than the soul, but you know, that's. I'm going to stop there, I guess. I think I know the answer from... Oh, I read that one already. Hi. Hello. You're lucky to know them and experience it. Yes, that's right. This vehicle just happened to be the right match for, Tiendo called it, that the souls needed to find a match for their lessons that they hadn't learned yet when they were with Jesus. And before that with Moses. And probably with Elijah too, I bet. It looked like it. Elijah had people that followed him around, but he stayed removed from them, and he had one individual with him, which is that would be a next level way to do it, because the teacher can't be too close to the students all the time. Now, I'm not a teacher. If anybody thinks about me that way, that's fine if they're learning something from the things I say, but I'm not a teacher to the degree that I'm referring to it in reference to next level teachers. And they're the only, they're the biggest teachers. And that's what I'm trying to just be there, not substitute teacher, but because I'm not a substitute teacher either. I'm more of an aid, instruction, an aid, or helper. I'm a helper, that's what I am. And that's the terminology that Tiendo used for some of the tests that we were doing. I was in awe of them the whole time. And there wasn't any obvious reason. I mean, yeah, the obvious reason is that it all made sense to me. Everything they said made sense to me. Even though I didn't, some of the things, well, no, that's not true. Everything they said made sense to me. The first presentation, everything made sense to me. But I ended up questioning certain things pretty soon after I joined. And so it's not like I was mesmerized, indefinitely by the truth. Now, it's one thing to be mesmerized by something that's, down a road that, you end up killing yourself for some madman's obsession. And forcing you to, at gunpoint even, to drink poison, the Kool-Aid. And Heaven's Gate Group was nothing like that at all. It was if anything, it was the complete opposite. And now the people that killed themselves and believed that they were doing it for God in some way, because I think, I don't know that much about Jim Jones' preaching, but I think he was more godly talking, God talking and God-fearing and whatever, when he was in L.A., I think, or when he was in L.A. or San Francisco, I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was San Francisco. But when he moved to Guyana, I heard some of the speeches that he gave, or I read about him, and he was talking about, he visited Russia because he was thinking of himself more as a believer in communism and Stalin, and I think Stalin. So I mean, what happens in many of the religions is they end up using the name only, and the ideas, the most highfalutin ideas they use. Heaven exists, God exists, of course. I mean, members of the next level, deities exist. I'm sorry, I'm using my hands again. I got to restrain myself from using my hands. Because Doe didn't use his hands. I don't need to be theatrical about this. They just talk to us normally. Like I should restrain myself enough to do. Instead of looking like I'm ranting. I am ranting. I know I rant. I can't even tell the difference anymore. I've been doing it for so long. But I restrain myself around the people I live with and around. because, you know, they would kick me out if I would kick me out. I would kick me out too. Because this isn't meant to be pushed on anybody. TNO's information is supposed to be just like, the most we do is we put up a sign that says, here's what we have. I'm saying we because I am trying to represent Doe best I can and everything he taught me. So I'm part of him, I feel. And so we're just saying, this is what we represent. This is our beliefs. And if somebody it makes sense to somebody else, then, you know, we enjoy having you listen and participate in conversation as well, which I try to do in the chat room sometimes a little bit, and that's the path that everybody has to take for anything new, right? I know TNO's information is new because, you know, who's been talking about it, right? Besides a few people. You know, except for the bottom line story of the story and the name, which that's what the religions glue upon, you know, the name. So they call themselves Christians, but they don't evidence knowing what Jesus taught about how Jesus taught that we were to grow into being non-sexual beings. That's why he said that there are some eunuchs that are born eunuchs, and there are some eunuchs that are made eunuchs by men, and then there are some eunuchs that are that make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. And so that's like in service to the next level, saying I don't want to be human anymore, and so I want to stop thinking like a mammal. I want to stop functioning like a mammal, and I don't want to have any sexuality because you don't, in your kingdom that's not mammalian, you don't have sexuality. Now they didn't know that 2,000 years ago, that in their kingdom they didn't have any sexuality, but because they weren't ready for that stage anyway. But now where we have pretty much free sexuality everywhere, you know, throughout the internet, and many people's lives. Now it's now that stands out. That means, like, you know, it's like now you can see where the next level was stimulating that, because, like, for instance, some of the members of the next level's crew went to have themselves castrated, and I was part of the first castration that was done by one of the members who was a nurse who worked for an orchiectomist in the Dallas area, I think it was, and she got experience, or maybe it was. Yeah, I think it was the Dallas area. And so she started to prepare, because Doe was interested in castrating himself, or you know, having the procedure done to himself, not doing it himself. Because he told us right before that, he told us he had a nocturnal emission. And nocturnal emissions were considered to be energy off the top if you didn't do anything to stimulate it, like by touching yourself or by thinking, you know, just imagining something or rubbing against something for a male, and for female, you know, I guess the same thing. So And that started when Doug brought that up. He brought it up to the whole class at first, and then after that he spoke to just the males, and he told them the procedure that was involved in the castration. And so then then a little while after that, maybe some weeks, or maybe just a week, Doe called a bunch of students to his quarters, because a lot of times he had a different place where he lived. And I started the conversation with that Elijah was probably separate from the students with that. So he called us to his house. I mean, we rented houses. We owned one once, and T and Doe said they regretted buying it. But I guess it was their instruction to buy it, or maybe they thought that was a mistake, and that it wasn't instruction. Because they're not like robots when you're working for the next level remotely, like they are and undercover. Because you're undercover because humans can't tell who you really are through your vehicle, unless they hear what comes out of your mouth, and they recognize it because they were given a seed of that recognition. And it's still hard to recognize because the seed has to grow. So, it's probably the next level probably works hard to keep vehicles from going too far into certain things so that they don't have so much to get out of when the next level older members put out the word and they hear it and leave everything behind, or feel like they have to leave everything behind. It can be made so it's not so hard for some. And then others that are more advanced, it can be made hard for, and then they can be an example that all things are possible when you are willing to put yourself in the hands of the creators that created the earth and all the life forms on it, and who exist beyond the stars in deep outer space. Beyond some stars. But, and thinking of it that way is important. That's the way T and Doe taught, because the Luciferian space aliens are very real, and they're souls, according to Doe. And so the souls that are using human genetic material to grow bodies that they can then take over and use on their spacecrafts, and for whatever other reason they might have to have a physical body, for instance, to look normal to somebody who they might be priming to be a contactee or a channeler. In fact, I think it was either David Icke or Rael that told a story about, if I recall correctly, about their contact that they had. They both had contact from outer space, something otherworldly. It didn't have to be from outer space. I mean, Luciferian space aliens can't go into outer space very far, so that's who it's probably from, unless they were teaching key things that that show the difference. Then everything else is according to the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls. They actually are the ones that rule the nation, and rule us all, to the degree that we allow them to rule us all, and to the degree that we want to grow out of that, and we look to the next level to help us, then that's the degree that we are filling our balloon, our soul balloon, with the mind from the next level, which can be just a little bit of mind, but it's got a lot of power to it, and beginning to get rid of the mind from the human kingdom that got us into all the things and were good as stepping stones to get to where we were. So there was nothing bad about any of it, none of it. Because if somebody gets to the point to where they can even comprehend the step of moving faster towards the next level, which might take some time, for that to germinate in us, because, which is fine, because the next level is not in a hurry, and they save everything that's worth something. So we never know. We could be worth something. Any of us can be worth something to the next level, potentially. But if we want to try to, if we feel compelled to, because it's not like you try to do it. That's where the Christians get that part right, in a sense. That it's not by your works that the next level wants to help you. It's by your intention at first. And then to show your intention when they start to help you, they know that they're going to start to put things into your life a little differently, so to help you, stimulate you to actually move away from the human kingdom in all ways. And that might take a long time. I don't know. Everybody grows at their own pace. But they don't want to waste their time with trying to clobber somebody with the information and tell them that if they don't take the information, then they're going to go to hell. Everything is recycled except for the next level things. And so actually there really isn't any gamble with trying to start a relationship with the next level, because I'm evidence, well, to me I'm evidence of how gentle next level takes individuals. The way that my wife and I kind of wasn't a wife. I mean, we weren't married, but we lived together for 17 years and had a child together and raised her stepdaughter. Anyway, the way that she broke up with me, it was very interesting the way that happened, and I was ready for it at the time, even though I would never have instigated it. And but it allowed me to work full-time on my book. I don't know if I ever would have got that done if I had to do it with actually giving all the attention that a partner usually wants from a partner. Well, let's see, I'll go back to the chat room. Good morning from Spain. Yeah, you know what? I'm doing this broadcast this late all the time because I feel like it gives a chance for the early risers in Spain to, get to hear what I'm talking about, and I think it's a value, so I'm glad to hear that there's somebody from Spain listening in. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to give an answer I hope TNO would approve of. I don't have a guarantee because I'm not a channeler, and I'm not a contactee with telepathic communication. Although I do receive thoughts that I suspect are coming from them sometimes. I don't really have any doubt that I've seen a lot of evidence in the last 15, 20 years of their communication with me, premonitions and dreams, and so which I didn't have any of that before I joined, or even during the classroom. I didn't have any of that. I think they can turn it on and off in somebody, so that they can show somebody something that they normally couldn't see, like a spirit or a soul that's more dense than a spirit. And I mean, I used to see things out of the corner of my eye, and I turn, and it's like there wasn't anything there. But I was told by somebody that was with my partner one time in the group that I had really good peripheral vision, I guess. I don't know how he knew that. Maybe I saw him doing something that, I don't know how he knew that, actually. But from Indiana, okay. Gary, Indiana. Let's see, we did a meeting in Indiana in 1970 in Bloomington, maybe it was. Maybe I got that name a little wrong. And it was at the university. And how many people showed up? It was 1976. With the group, with the TNO group. That was, at that time, pretty brand new. There's a band called Marshall Applewhite now. Are you kidding? Holy smokes, you've got to be kidding. Oh, yep, see, that's dilution. And you say, Marshall Applewhite said such and such. Now you're going to see that quoted, right? And then people are going to say, really? He said that? And then people aren't going to know the difference. Which is which, unless they've been on the broadcasts or they've been studying the subject. Wow, I didn't think it would happen that fast. Well, I mean, I should have known better because I know Heaven's Gate is being used in all kinds of ways now. Whenever someone dies, people are saying he went to heaven through Heaven's Gate. See, that's what doesn't exist. That Jesus doesn't exist. That heavenly gate doesn't exist. Because the gate is actually the older member that's incarnate. And you have to please them. And I don't mean please, in a trite way or anything, like that, like they need to be pleased, like it's for their jolliness or something, their joy of being pleased, having you. They don't need us. They only want to please their older member. That's why it works so well. It's not a parallel. What do you call it? It's not a horizontal giving of love and receiving of love. It's a vertical. And This is a good example also of what probably happened after Jesus left. And that's the reason why Jesus said that don't believe anybody that comes saying in my name, saying they're the Christ. Of course, the word Christ, they should have left it what it meant, but it would have been probably a long word, but it would have been like anointed one to overcome the human kingdom, to demonstrate the path to the become a member of the next level. Something that, I don't know how you, you don't have to say it that long, and you could probably still get the idea in there by, a lot less words, but it would be a little more than like heaven, yes, Jesus said that in his Father's heaven, in his Father's house, there are many mansions. Okay, the word is actually residing places or abodes, places to live, and but they are mansions. Like compared to the big. And sometimes they don't have to be big. They can be tiny too. They can, they can be little drones. No-see-ums. I knew those no-see-ums were really next level computers. Well, who knows what they can tap into with their computer systems? It's like anybody's guess. We certainly don't know. There's a lot we don't know. Okay, let's see what else. Oh no. Oh, that's what was so fascinating about the Heaven's Gate group, was because so many followers for so long. You had to be pretty committed to stay for 19 years and passionate about it. Yes, I was. But I was lit on fire by Do and T. I said, I was caught like a fish. I was caught. And then what happens is when the rancher brings all those wild horses into the corral, then they start working with them to try to refine their behavior, so they're not jumping up and kicking everybody and, and stuff like that, trying to calm them down and kind of tame them, actually. And so that's what T and Do were doing to us in the beginning of the classroom, especially. And that lasted to the end of the classroom as well, because the taming is a constant effort. Even though some things become very easy to step away from. I'll give you an example. In the beginning, we were living outdoors for about 3 and a half, 4 years, I don't know, 3 to 4 years. And I would hear tunes in my head, and like jingos from like I didn't even know what they were. Well, maybe I did know some of them, but there could have been silly things from commercials on TV that I watched when I was a kid, that I remembered, things like that, or who maybe it was. I don't remember it actually being songs like rock songs or anything like that, and it wasn't like anyway. But I brought it up. I brought it up to T, or maybe somebody else did. Maybe somebody else was having the same problem trying to get those thoughts out of their heads, because our lesson plan was to not fill our heads with anything from the past. So there was no singing, no anything at first. And then singing came later, but only on instigation of T, before she left. But then I outgrew that, so it didn't bother me anymore. I didn't even hear anything anymore. And another thing I kind of sort of outgrew, but not completely, was whenever a female vehicle, even though we were wearing like clothing that was like buttoned at the top and so not showing any flesh. We had uniforms sometimes, so the least flesh possible was not shown, and even facial expressions. Tiendo wanted to kind of wean us from like relating to one another based on the way we look. Because males respond differently to females, and females differently to males, and females differently, even between females, there's differences, of course, but, and males. But, so all those differences that are based on gender, for instance, and maybe any other things, looks, are all potentially sensuality. It's all potentially sensory stimulating. And also influencing us to think about people in a certain way, or give them, be more, let's see what's the word for it. Well, see, partners were assigned to be a mirror for the other person of the things that they're doing differently than what we were being given to vibrate on. So, so if your partner, saw you doing something that wasn't procedure to do, and I'll talk more about this, but because it can sound really, I know it can sound pretty controlling, and it was controlling, but the control had to be the control we were taking over our vehicles. Tiendo didn't put controls on us, except once in a while they had to stimulate us to grow faster by telling us that we weren't growing fast enough, because they didn't feel us pulling from their minds, so they weren't getting anything new. And so anyway, partners, so we had conflict because of that. And that's the same thing like with a marriage, of course, or any kind of relationship that becomes serious. Conflict eventually comes into it, and then their ability to work through it, they're learning lessons. If they can do it civilly and not try to possess each other, and everything that goes along with that. And so those lessons are in the human kingdom, But in the classroom, Tiendo called it an accelerated period, because now we were 24/7 with somebody else as a partner. We didn't sleep. We slept in the same tent, but we had on different sides of a pretty big, good-sized tent, probably 9 by 12 or something like that, maybe 8 by something like that. But because Tiendo bought us a whole bunch of tents one time to replace the things that we brought with us when we joined, because that's what they told us to bring with us if we had it. Camping gear and automobiles would be good too, because they were traveling. So those are the things that would have been helpful. Oh, of course, money. Some people had I guess maybe a lot of money. Well, I know some had a lot of money because we lived for 3 to 4 years without working in the wilderness in Wyoming and Colorado, northern Colorado, and a little bit in New Mexico and Utah, and mostly in Texas. Mostly in Texas and Wyoming area. We go back and forth according to the seasons. We got trapped in a snowstorm once when we went back up to Wyoming, and we had like, I don't know, it was at least a foot, but maybe more, and we were like a half mile over land. There was no even road where we were from the nearest paved road. But we had a big crew, and we got out there with our cardboard boxes that we made flat, and we used them as scoops. And then we used the car as a battering ram. So we would dig it out, and then, I don't know if that would made it faster, probably made it slower, because you had to dig it out. But, I'm not saying we did everything the best way, but we dug out of that place. But it wasn't, it was a test of physicality as well, because it was cold sometimes. We lived outdoors. I remember when it was like 0 degrees and I was sleeping outside in Utah. And we had fires, but we slept in sleeping bags, and people would warm rocks by the fire and then put it in their sleeping bag. I wasn't smart enough to do that. But I mean, some people damage their sleeping bag by doing that. But but they put it in a towel or something, and then it worked better. But they can burn that too. So anyway, I got way off into Never Never Land there, or Positive Land, maybe I'm gonna call it. No, not never. What's the opposite of Never Never? Always Always. Always Always Land. Never always, always never. I like to play with words. There's a big difference between yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, oh, you're talking to somebody else. Okay. I won't. Right, and that faith for choosing to leave this world doesn't just happen. The next level is working with everybody potentially that looks towards them in any way. It could be an inventor that never went to church, and he wants to know how to make a better invention or to cure cancer or something. And the next level, might have provided that information in the database of the earth. And if they did, then that individual can tap into it. But certain information is harder to tap into than other information, I think. And so it takes a lot of trial and error, and they keep on working at it, and that's part of the human kingdom. And so they're and the people that want the truth they want the truth. When someone wants the truth about something, then something something outside the human kingdom. Something. Maybe I don't know if anything would fall into the category or not. Like if you want the truth of how to make apple cider. I don't know. I don't think the next level pays any attention to that kind of a request for the truth. But if it's the truth about what our purpose is, or what our highest purpose can be, kind of thing, or what's above the human kingdom, or is there more to life than just this, or why do I feel so bad all the time? Is there a way to get out of this? Usually, somebody that's totally contented isn't that interested. It depends on the person. It depends on whether they, how contented they became. I mean, you can have young people that didn't really have that much chance to become contented, so they can be curious about this, sure, and they can grow as fast as anybody else, and sometimes faster because of being more open-minded instead of becoming entrenched into certain stagnant ways of thinking. They end up being dead ends. But we don't even know what those dead ends are, and so we're like, you know, in a sense, in that respect, we're like blind men, men and women, running around and trying to feel our way around, and it's not easy because it's a very complicated world mentally, especially. And so, but we get lessons, you know, and then we see things, we see patterns. The next level helps us by giving us little clues, and then we see that in the news, you know, and we think, oh, is that a clue from the next level? You know, I kind of asked them to help me, give me some clues on how to, you know, grow faster and to understand you more, and whatever it is the person is asking about them. They might even give us human things so that we can learn to not want them, not desire them, because we can burn it out of ourselves. To use that example, I think, towards sexuality. She didn't say that ever, but she wrote it in the book that she started to write that was never published. The name of it was, I Can't Believe That, But You Must. I still don't know how to really think about that title. I can't believe that, but you must. Anyway, I think I got a little idea of it, but it's if it's like the vehicle saying, I can't believe that. And then she's coming in with the next level mind and saying, but you must. Because the vehicle was designed to be used by the older member. I think that might be how T would have. I don't know, that works for me right now. Like Tiendo taught, like if someone came along and they heard them talking about something and they were learning something from it, they would stay with that person if they could to learn whatever they could from that person. And so their example, you know, it's like it's the seeker mentality that Jesus taught. Well, you know, ask and you shall find, seek and you shall find. No, seek and you shall find, ask and you shall receive, and knock and the door shall be open to you. And that's the Bob Dylan Heaven's Gate song. Not Heaven's Gate song, Heaven's Door, the Door to Heaven song. Yeah, I gotta, I don't know if I have to meet Bob Dylan, but I don't know if I ever will. If the next level wants to arrange it, I'll try to be sensitive to whatever happens that might lead in that direction. Whether I know about it or not, you know, what it's going to lead to. Because the next level doesn't like, you know, like let's say the next level did want Sawyer to contact Bob Dylan and talk about the difference between, well, talk about Tiendo's Heaven's Gate, you know, theoretically. I would want to ask him what he thought about it, and if he didn't ask me what I thought about it, then I guess I wouldn't say anything. But I'd probably have a hard time holding my tongue. Oh, I'm yabbering about myself again. Yeah, it's see, from when we joined to when we left, when I left, and I believe this is going to be the case for everybody, and we're all going to be, all the dropouts are going to be aware of it to different degrees and in different ways, maybe, and according to the reason why they left the group. And so what T and Do are doing the whole time is like they're testing us. We're like always being tested, but not, you know, like a human tests people. You know, like with, you know, a written test that you read, but with doing things that a student might find fault with. And that happened to me right away in the group. But they don't do those things for that reason. Well, sometimes they might, well, sometimes, well, maybe all the time, they know that it will be a test for some. Yeah, I could say that. But what they don't know is how the individual will respond to it. Well, a big example was when in 1977, so just approximately, Tiendo had a meeting with us, and said that T said actually she spoke that started that meeting, I believe, or maybe she said it in the middle of the meeting, but she said, "You need to give us your will." She later told Do that we only learned about after T left her vehicle, that she thought that she was going to lose half the class when she said that. So, you know, what kind of a cult leader wants to get rid of their followers because they derive their standing from the amount of followers they have and the relationships they have with those followers in the sense of the human facsimile cults that are started by the Luciferian space alien, fallen angels. But just, I didn't go back and finish this thought before. The individuals that are in those cults that get hoodwinked into doing something doesn't mean that they're not moving ahead in the next level's mind. So when they lose their vehicles, even the Jim Jones people, if they were really believing, you know, that Jim Jones was teaching them from God, from the Creator, and so they went along with it, the next level can see that they're separating from the human kingdom. And so the only way you can separate from the human kingdom is if the next level draws you to them. And they do that by having their older members present. And that's still happening right now, because as long as their information is available, and especially with witnesses, then more of the truth is available. Because the witnesses can give the context of a lot of the instructions and the procedures and the whole overall lesson plan. Like, you know, to just call it the class is, you know, understandable, and even has its ramification. I mean, its correlation with the physical world, because we actually met in the Laramie classroom in the University of Wyoming. while we were living outdoors in the Vitavu Medicine Bow rustic wilderness camping area. And I know I got off the track again. I'm not going to try to go back there. Maybe I'll come back to it like I just did that one part, but I probably didn't finish again. But okay, thanks. Moving my arms isn't a big deal. It's a natural response. We know you're just trying to pass along information that you learned as a member. I appreciate that. You're a nice vibration. Yes, Ben and HG people were so peaceful, all of them. Doe was not violent towards anyone, as is this group is compared all the time to other violent cults, which Heaven's Gate doesn't fit into those comparisons. No, not at all. And that's what Jesus taught too. He said, between one another, you're to have peace and kindness, and do unto others as you'd have them do to you, and love your neighbor as yourself. Even love your enemies, because the next level is providing for those enemies too. But what you love about your enemies is that they are your ticket to becoming a member of the next level, because the next level uses the enemies to teach us what we don't want. You know, and that's why we've had a very peaceful generation growing in the United States and Canada and all around the world. You know, there's peaceful people. And because that's always been the way the next level, no matter what religion it was or whatever strain it came through, that's a common characteristic of a member of the next level, that they are considerate, kind, thoughtful, tolerant of others. What do they call it? Idiosyncrasies. Was it idiosyncrasies? Or here's something good for you. What Tiendo called a fart was a poofoofus. A poofoofus. They changed a lot of our terminology so that we'd have a fresh start with our thinking. And if it came from them, it came from their minds, that means you were receiving Holy Spirit, holy mind, pure mind, because it's coming from the Chief of Chiefs through however many chiefs there are, and then with the chiefs are also older members. Maybe not. I guess they're probably all older members, and yeah, they obviously are, and younger members to us, to the earth, to the heavens that are created on the earth, to be the location where the spirits end up accumulating in the atmosphere of the earth, and potentially even beyond that, maybe quite some distance. I don't know. Tiendo didn't get into that kind of a detail with that subject. They got into details with other subjects. Well, not that I heard. Anyway, I wasn't with them the whole 22 years that they were working with students. But like 25 years total. I guess it's like 23 years. Because they met in 72, It was 25 years until Doe left. Let's see, where am I? Oh yeah, I forgot to go back into the idea of when T said, you need to give us your will. That was just one of the first things that they said and did. But there were a lot of things that happened that the vehicle was bucking. Like I didn't want to get up in the middle of the night to pee because I was so cold. And my feet were cold when I was sleeping sometimes. And so I was uncomfortable, and but even when we had a storm, sometimes like when it was also cold out and the winds were blowing, I wouldn't go out, while other members of the group would go out and try to hold down the tents and stuff. So see, I wasn't putting as much effort out as others, but I learned to do it more because I learned from those other students that were go-getters. They were right Johnny on the spot, like Sorority. If there was something happening that needed attention, Sorority was there. I was his partner most often. And he was the first one to be castrated, and he was happy as anything. And he would show me how the hair was disappearing on his arm because of not having the testosterone organs churning away. And that was completely voluntary too, of course. No, there was no yelling. No, T raised her voice one time a little bit when she was laughing one time, and a couple times. I'm talking like a loud laugh, I never saw her actually, I never heard her laugh, but she smiled plenty of times, but she wasn't like, neither one of them they were right in the middle. They were teaching that we wanted to maintain a pleasant countenance, not looking down in the mouth and not looking overly joyous or whatever, overly, expressing it, So we were trying to control our, one of my lessons there was to have more facial expressions so that some people wouldn't take me as being angry with them. Because some of my partners said that about me. I don't know if I ever really worked on that, but I thought about it. I think I did work on it a little bit, come to think of it. So so we had many things that happened. Yeah, I made that tape, but should I go into all that right now? I don't know. Not yet. I said not yet. I talked about some subjects before, and I don't want to keep on saying the same thing over and over again. Even though I don't expect people to listen to everything I say, of course not. But if somebody does want to, you can go back and see a lot of stuff in these other live streams. Everything had a little bit new stuff to it, I think. New ways of, because there was so much that T&O gave us, and I had spent so many years with them. I have so many examples of their behavior and ways, and so it's sometimes hard for me to focus on, you know, what examples to use, but this idea of how they filtered out, so to speak, the individuals that didn't seem to have the amount of effort that was needed to make it all the way to the graduation. So there was a lot of ways to leave the classroom was encouraged a number of times. The first time was in 1976. So just right after we were all gathered in Wyoming, after being public for 9 months. And so those are all like people that, and T&O found out that some were still having sex and smoking marijuana. So they said that they had a meeting and they said that it doesn't go here. If you want to do that, then this isn't the classroom for you. And I don't know if anybody left right after that, but not too long after that, T&O separated the group into 2 groups, and then went to the bigger group. The one group was 19 members, and the bigger group was, you know, I guess 70-something members. I don't know. It's anyway, and they told the bigger group that I was in that we made the first cut, and that group mostly lost touch with T&O eventually, even though T&O was actually in the town where they were renting an apartment on the street, on the very street where they were renting an apartment. Some of those members of that 19 that had survived for a number of years trying to live by what T&O taught them without having their older member there. So that became a harder test for them in a lot of ways. And because of that, one individual, well, 2 individuals actually, Dur Odie and Steele Odie, they ended up looking for a T&O, and went to Texas and went to Amarillo and walked into a hospital where Nor Odie and Song Odie were working. And I think Song Odie was a receptionist and Nor Odie, maybe they were both. I don't know what Nor Odie was doing. Anyway, and recognized Nor Odie or Song Odie, whichever one it was. And so he ended, and then we communicated that to T&O, and he rejoined the classroom. But other than that, nobody knew where we were, the people that left. And T&O really knew how to stay hidden. Even while, by having post office boxes and using payphones and even using hotels for communication with other people, like calling the desk and saying they're expecting to meet somebody, and if you can give them this phone number if they call or when they come in, and so you give them the phone, so the person calls or comes in and said, "Well, any messages for?" I was going to expect to meet somebody there. So I guess it was telling a little white lie. I'm not sure exactly how they said it, so I didn't ever set that up. So I don't know that they ever told a lie. They could have had a way of saying it to where it was, vague what their intentions were, and sometimes they might have been even staying in a hotel, because they sometimes did if somebody helped them with it, or if Doe had the money for it while he was traveling. Because when we gave up for the second time, when we gave up, we exhausted our money, and then Doe asked us if we wanted to continue, and we said yes, and so then we went on from the next couple months just by asking people for help. And we would go to anybody, not personal, not on the street. We wouldn't just talk to people on the street, businesses, restaurants, for food. That's what we would ask for. We didn't ask for money. And we would work. We went to some Christian camps, and we worked for them while for our stay there, while we were trying to put a meeting together in the town nearby, like in Missoula, Montana. We did that. And sometimes we shared information with those people, depending on how much they asked about. And otherwise, we didn't offer anything, because we weren't there to try to impress other people with what we had, even though we wanted to in some ways. But we knew the next level, the way they work is that's what the meeting is for. And I'm sure people were talked to by some about things. I just don't remember doing it myself with all the churches that I visited and stayed in all over the country. I mean, we would always get into conversations that would lead to it. Not always, I'm saying. My studio just disconnected and reconnected again, so it's done it before and it seems to still work. Yeah, my studio just disconnected and reconnected again. Anyway, so yeah, so like another example, when they brought birds in to the, I talked about that in the last stream, I think. Or when they brought in like crystal goblets, everybody talked about that. I remember thinking, wow, look at that, that's strange. I kind of had a little thought of, why do we need that kind of thing? But then I just put it out of my mind, because it was part of the program, as far as I was concerned. So if I had a problem with that, geez, but for some people, those things built up. They maybe even didn't take too many. And in combination with other things that they were dealing with, maybe not having a good time dealing with their partners, and so it was trying, of course, and sometimes. But overall, it was not. It was kind of easy. It was easy to just be there, but it was hard to grow faster. And that's when Doe even brought up a time in 1990, around 1990, 91, I think it was, where he said that they have enough money in reserve that he can offer $2,000 to any student that might want to leave, because so they don't stay here just because they're comfortable here. Because we had a very easy lifestyle with half the craft, half the people were working jobs, and sometimes very well-paying jobs in the computer industry, and the other half were taking care of the meals and everything, and the cleaning of the house, and whatever T and Doe needed. So So that, so communally, we were, giving our paychecks totally to them, to the pursers. Actually, we put it in a box that had a hole in it, like a piggy bank. And I didn't ever do any shopping, really, hardly. Because we had a crew that did that, and I wasn't on that crew because I had an out-of-craft task. So it was an in-craft task to go shopping. So everything was pretty normal, and actually, just we tried to blend in with our environment, but sometimes we had to put paper over the windows, and because there were people looking in. One time, what happened in Texas, there were people looking at it, trying to look at us, because I guess maybe they saw us in our jumpsuits that were gray, kind of light gray, and made out of this polyester kind of fiber that was very soft and a little bit flexible, and we had hoods that we wore even when we were out in the wild, when we were trying to overcome facial, which I talked about before. But so I remember that craft, we ended up Riccardi actually installed an alarm system so that we would know if somebody was, and we had a way of making sounds. I don't know what we did broadcast or not, but and then we left that place because I'll just give it a little bit of that view. So by the time individuals, by the time T left, a bunch of students were, I think, on pretty solid ground. I mean, I would have thought that I was, but I wasn't on solid ground as I thought I was. And that's a problem, if you think you're doing better than you are. I mean, I didn't have any reason to think I wasn't doing well because Doe was, because Doe didn't know what I was hiding. And I didn't even know what I was hiding because I wasn't allowing myself to really think of it as serious. I was thinking of it as the little thing. And it didn't happen that often, the things I'm talking about. And so that's how, little things creep in, and they become bigger things if you don't deal with them. And so then it becomes harder and harder. Well, then if the next, according to Carlin, who talked to Doe, that what happened to me was that the next level knew that I was I guess acting a little bit deceitful, not intentionally being deceitful, but it just was happening that way because I was I felt guilt when I had a nocturnal emission, and I had to sign out a washcloth to clean myself up, and nocturnal emission wasn't the problem because that was considered to be if you didn't stimulate it off the top. But the problem was we had a procedure for cleaning up, and we had to sign out the washcloth, so that would get reported to Doe and T and Doe, or a crew. And I didn't think of it as going to T and Doe actually. I thought of it as going to fellow classmates, and I was embarrassed by that. And because I knew fellow classmates were actually the ones that replaced the washcloths that we used. So then I stopped using washcloths. So I was breaking the procedure again, even more so. I mean, you can, So it's like, so because of that and other ways that I was compromising my self-control, self-imposed control of my thoughts and actions, the next level, I saw me as needing a stronger test to kind of face me with my own shortcomings, because they want people that are going to seek their help when we get a test, and keep seeking their help and finding ways to apply it. Okay, now I didn't ask for help. I mean, I did, but it wasn't. It's like that was taken from me too, because what Carlin said, Doe told him, was that some of the recognition of the next level was taken away from me, if I remember correctly. Some of the recognition of the next level was taken away from me. And that makes sense to me, because with other things that Tian-Do taught, how they were regulating what we were dealing with. They regulated what influences, what discarnates, what Luciferian, space alien, fallen angels that they called boogers could do, could have access to us. So when I didn't have that help from the greater part of their mind, that was, Tian-Do also taught that during meetings they would run our influences off sometimes, maybe every time, probably pretty often. Because they would have thoughts, and they would recognize that those thoughts weren't their thoughts, because they knew what kind of thoughts their package had, what their vehicle dealt them in kinds of thoughts that the influences, and they knew what they knew how to recognize the space alien thoughts sometimes, and if they didn't know if it was a space alien thought, or then that's what brought the, I mean, they would talk about what they were, when they felt like they were receiving something from the next level, which when something was received from the next level, it comes kind of with that identity of where it came from. It's a subtle sense that I've experienced a number of times. And you can't trust it entirely. So it's not like a ticker tape connection, like a dropout member of the group said that he had with Doe. And well, maybe just that's the way he just said it, and he meant it in the same way. So I shouldn't be criticizing him. But but that individual also made some prophecies of how long it was going to be until, I guess, California was sunk or something. And he said it was going to be, I think he said about 10 years. And that was at the 10-year anniversary of 1997 departure. So that's past now, 2017. And I don't think California fell into the ocean yet. I don't know if it's ever going to fall into the ocean. That's not the way the next level said they were going to recycle the whatever part they recycle, or parts. I don't know what parts they're going to recycle exactly. I mean, I can see the possibilities with California burning so much, and not just California but the West. You know, firefighters have been on the increase every year for a while now. Well, I mean, they weren't always on the increase. I mean, I'm sure if you looked at a graph, there would probably be some fluctuation up and down year to year compared with the previous years. But the general trend is an upward trend. Because yes, it seems like it's pretty obvious. I mean, it was obvious to me that there was a warming, at least in the area where I grew up, because I used to go out and, you know, play on so much snow that you could walk over a Volkswagen and not know you were walking over a Volkswagen. In New York, on Long Island, sometimes. And that wasn't freshly fallen. That's like a combination of drift and stuff like that. But because they didn't get that much snow. But you know, but that doesn't happen. I mean, they're getting snow this year. Last year they got more snow than a lot before that. But I don't really follow it that much anyway. But I know that the first year I was in Vermont, there was hardly any snow during the time that we were looking at the house that I moved into up there at the time. And so let me look back in the chat room. I'm in the UK. It's pretty early here too. Yeah. Cool. I'm glad that I was saying to somebody that was from Spain that was here for a while, maybe not very long, but that I was, you know, I was leaning towards about 2 a.m. to start this, with the idea of, you know, going till, well, 2 hours probably at the least. Have you heard of the band Drab Majesty? Yes, and I've heard their Heaven's Gate related stuff. They are heavily influenced by Heaven's Gate, but they aren't doing it in a mocking way that a lot of current artists do. Yeah, I noticed that. I like them, you know. I mean, I'm not that into that kind of music. I'm not really into any kind of music now, except I guess egotistically myself, my own music, or the music that I play with people, other people. I like everything, you know. I mean, a lot of stuff. And sometimes I do take a break and watch a concert on YouTube or something, you know, from the historic rock days. But yeah, that's yeah, right. Let's see if I missed anything with that. Oh, hey Sawyer, how's it going? I'm just getting home from work. Tough day at the office. What do you do after an emotionally difficult day? Well, fortunately, I don't have too many of those. I did have some emotionally difficult days. One of the things I did some time ago, I had a lot of emotionally difficult days. And I would go into the basement, I would play saxophone. Kind of like, you know, playing the blues kind of thing. I would play to, what's her name, that artist? Well, I would play the Zydeco music, and Tracy Chapman. Because when I left the group, my ex, I mean the woman that's my ex now, was listening to Tracy Chapman, and so I started listening to her and really like her music. And so I started playing saxophone with that. And music in general, although if I'm really emotionally upset, I couldn't blow a saxophone or a flute. That happened to me in 1974 or 5, when my partner at that time of 5 years decided to hitchhike to Canada without me, even though we lived up there together. I was deported from there, and she met me at the border, and then we lived in Oregon. So we were in Yakima, Washington at the time, picking fruit and picking apples and cherries. Well, 2 different parts of the season, but apples at the time, what I'm talking about now. And she wanted to go visit some friends that we had up in British Columbia. And so she hitchhiked up there by herself. And I was concerned about her hitchhiking by herself, but she's a strong-minded woman. And although one time I remember a carload of guys tried to pull her into the car when we were hitchhiking, because we did a lot of hitchhiking together ever since we met, on Long Island, in the same hometown, but after we had graduated high school already. Different high school in the same hometown. It's a big town. But so when I had a flute with me in the tent where we were living in the orchard, and I remember when she left, I tried to play it, but I was so I was kind of crying somewhat, and I think a little bit there, and so I didn't have the force of the breath to blow the flute. I'm not, I'm going to think if Tia Doe said anything about. Well, see, we didn't have any really well, to me, they weren't emotional relationships. It did become an emotional relationship with Doe, with me and Doe, and me and T. Not so much. Well, yeah. While I was in the classroom, I had that emotional relationship with Doe, and then I've seen it. I've seen it periodically. I see it surface. Especially when I say something that just different things just touch me sometimes with Doe in my mind, and I just feel, it's a good feeling actually what I'm talking about. But it's like a little ache, and sometimes your voice will crack or something, if you're talking while it happens. So what's going on in the UK if that individual is still here? Well, actually, I got something to say about the UK. So the second time that the Next Level crew went public, the first time was as the fulfilling the prophecy of the two witnesses, and I believe I can show that pretty well on my blog if somebody on this channel, actually, the videos I made. And so that started in 1975 and was over by 1988 when Doe wrote 88 Update. And then Doe started, so it was after T left her vehicle that Doe started to get signals, different kinds of signals of different kinds of ideas of things that he felt like T wanted him to bring up. T outside her vehicle now. Now he was with T long enough to where he knew T's mind and knew the way T thought about things and felt about things and the kinds of things that she would say or do. And so that became the teaching that Doe then used, because it became his teachings, his mind, when he took it in and received it, because he recognized that T was his older member. T never told him that. And so like T was his heavenly father in the Christian terminology. And so so in the 90s, Doe felt like we were looking for ways to communicate with the public again, but we didn't. But Doe was not sure on what voice to use. In other words, what language to focus on, whether it would be generic language, like next evolutionary level above human. There's no religiosity in that. And or religious language, the Christian language, since that was the most recent group of people that were and vehicles that were prepared for the Next Level's return, having been here before last with in the name of Jesus, with a vehicle named Jesus. And so Doe started putting out information, and he decided to start a little video project. And so we had students going to like UFO conferences and taping some of the people that are being the speakers in those places, like Linda Moulton Howe and Bill English and Bill Lear. I think sometimes might have been interviewed by Rick Cody, I think, when he was outside the classroom, actually, but on Doe's instruction, because Rick Cody still got had some tasks even outside the classroom. And so what I was going to get to is one of the things that Doe did was put out new information, and so he started that with the Beyond Human series. So when I started to study this in the Scripture and how it came out in the Scripture, in the book of Revelation, I started to look at the 7 seals, because those 7 seals represent the opening of the book. So in other words, the book being their information from the next level that they were passing on. All this terminology, everything is the book. That's the program. That's the astronaut training program from 2,000 years ago. And now the updates here now for the 3rd trimester in the birth of those souls that were started from the Moses camp or before that. And so the second thing was the Beyond Human series. And the third thing was the USA Today information advertisement. It was a third of a page of USA Today, and it was put in the international and the national edition for the same day on May 27th, I think it was. May 27th, 1993, I believe it was. And so associated with those 7 seals were also not necessarily lined up with each other, or not lined up with each other at all, actually. During the first seal opening of the 7 seals, which are also considered to be affirmation periods, when individuals are recognizing their older member as Tian-Do, older members as Tian-Do. And that's what was happening to the students that were with Tian-Do. They were making their commitment to Tian-Do, making the new covenant. There's always a new covenant with each classroom. There's the covenant with the Jehovah, Moses, Aaron experience, and the other students in that crew, and then between the one that was called the Father by Jesus and John the Baptist, which seemed to be an older student, and the other older students that didn't have that task at that moment, but that same task, but had other tasks. But so oh yeah. So then the next thunder after that, since I'm calling each of these the 7 thunders, with the first one being in 75, I don't know if I said that before. So the Beyond Human was the second, and the third one was the USA Today. And the 7 thunders are listed in Revelation chapter 10. And the book is talked about in Revelation chapter 5, and 5 and 10 also have relationship with the little book that's to be released, that was to be meant for after they left, which I think is the task that, since I dropped away, I wasn't left behind on purpose to do this task. But Tian-Do took advantage of my failure to, when they saw that I wanted to be of service again, to give me a task of talking about how everything that Tian-Do did can be related to prophecy in the book of Revelations and everything Jesus talked about. And my book is right here. Oh, I have my screen. I forgot I had it on the screen. Dummy me. My book, that's my book cover. And I don't give the hard copies away free, but because I have to pay for them. So, but I do give away a digital version free. It's posted on my blog in 7 sections with that title, Tiendo, the Father and Jesus, Heaven's Gate, UFO 2 Witnesses, and I do put Jesus in quotes whenever I can do that, because it's not the same vehicle that was named Jesus that is the return of Jesus, of the soul Jesus, because they actually put that Jesus' body was put in a closet. Doe said. He didn't say it that way. He didn't say, I put the Jesus body in a closet. No. What he said was, I put my body, my next level body, in a closet. And he said that T didn't, T might have also put her body in a closet, but she had more than one body. Get that. Because her mind had grown so much that she didn't need to, or the amount of mind that she needed to use to draw on in order to do this task wasn't her entire mind. So I don't know what percentage it was. Doe didn't say anything about that. So everything's very well planned. So prophecy isn't mysterious, really. It's just a matter of perspective of what we know about the technology of the next level, and how they can know when certain things, they have events. They don't have time like we have it. They have events that mark their form of time. So they knew there would be a certain amount of time allotted for the classroom. Maybe that was 20 years. I don't know. Maybe more than that. Maybe it was 25, quarter century. I guess, starting from when, so that they would end up at the end of the age, just like Jesus talked about, 1997. And there's a 4-year difference in some of the calendars because of, I forgot what it was now, but one of the Catholic edicts or something, or maybe one of the kings. Or maybe it's the calculation method that was used. I'm not sure what it was, but Doe talked about it too. I forgot though what it was. But a 4-year. So I guess 2001 would have been. Well, see, it does make sense. It's the same year, 1997, because everything they did, well, not everything they did, but certain things they did were like right on the 97. Of 1897, there was a crash flying saucer in Aurora, Texas, reported. I don't know for sure if that happened, but it sure looks like it. They had a grave site for a while, and then they tried to get people to exhume the grave, and after they tried to do that through the courts, the gravestone disappeared. And it was in the news, Dallas Morning News, talked about how something crashed into the clock tower or something like that, and a bunch of debris fell in the well that was in the center of town. And there was some kind of debris, and there was one body that I think they said was burned. But didn't seem to be human. So I guess it was visible. It was and so they buried it. But Tiendo didn't talk about that ever. I mean, T didn't talk about. Well, she talked about a few of sightings that happened with the Betty and Barney Hill. We talked about that a little bit. Not a whole lot. They didn't spend a whole lot of time on those kind of things. Most of the time in the classroom, as evidenced by the audio tapes, was spent on learning to not rebel from following the procedures and learning how to do them better and better. So some people had to train themselves to walk softly, train their vehicle. Not that hard, but it just takes effort. And consistency. And shut the cabinets gently, and speak gently, and even like at a whisper sometimes, But some people learned to whisper so loud that it sounded like it was regular talk. Remember that. But and very few words were necessary in the beginning, and then that relaxed after T left. That relaxed. In fact, I got to write that down. I don't know if relax is the best word for it. It's I mean, we were supposed to still only talk about our tasks or our tasks is what our whole conversation was, because we didn't talk to one another about each other, unless the partner was doing something that was not their task to do, because it didn't come from instructions of T&O. So if they were, let's say they were measuring flour and they weren't holding the knife on a 45-degree angle as they were measuring the flour, that was seen as an experiment. Just those ordinary things were used as like training, to where you might be in a next level lab where it's crucial that you get the exact amount measured, because they're scientists up there. Some of them aren't in different kinds of elemental scientists. They're in the weather lab, or they're making weather happen on the earth in certain ways, or adjusting it. But so then, if your partner was doing that, you would say, if you were the partner watching them do it, they were the primary, so they were doing the measurement. You were the secondary, so you were observing their measurements, making sure that it matched the recipe or the formula. They call the recipes the formulas. And then you would say something that wasn't the procedure. I could be wrong, but was the procedure to hold the knife on a 45-degree angle when you're measuring a dry ingredient, and then the partner, if they were if that wasn't a problem for them, they would just say, "Oh, thank you," That ended up being the response that was recommended all the time. But because of the little arguments that would start, because of even little things, I guess, potentially. Which I mean, didn't happen that often, but when it happened, we we were supposed to go out of the public eye and like go back into a rest chamber or something and talk with our partner, so that we're not infecting everybody else if if we're like letting out negativity and stuff. If we're getting frustrated or angry, or there was one time there was somebody got put one male pushed another male in the chest away from him, and I mentioned that last broadcast. But other than that, I don't remember any physical roughhousing. We had exercise machines. We ran on a track. We had volleyball, but we didn't play it right. We didn't play it as a member of the next level would play it. That's what we were trying to learn how to do everything the way a next level member would do it, and it didn't have to be told to us, but sometimes it did. Like when we were playing volleyball, some of the male students especially got too aggressive and they would spike it, and Tiendo, when they found out about it, because they didn't tell us that we couldn't do that, so it wasn't wrong for them to do that the first time, but some individuals, they were kind of like freaked out by the spike because it was so violent, in a sense. Because some individuals already knew that a next level member wouldn't do it that way, and but how would they do it? And what Tiendo then told us after that happened was that the next level members would see how long they could keep the ball afloat instead of trying to make somebody miss. Try to cooperate to see how long you can keep the ball up. Which is actually more fun. Well, it's not more fun for somebody that's really got a lot of testosterone, male or female, or estrogen. I don't know what it is exactly in the female, but okay, I'll go back to the chat room. So I'm reading from the chat room, am I right in thinking that prior to the early 70s, Doe wasn't Doe? He was just Marshall Applewhite, and that Doe entered his body in 72-3. He wasn't born of the next level like Jesus was. Right, his vehicle was not born the same way Jesus was. Doe felt like the next level had a crew do something to his vehicle to prepare it for that task. So whether that was some kind of an artificial insemination, that's what it looks like it was. And so I began to wonder if they took sperm from the Moses vehicle, because Tiendo felt like they did take Moses' vehicle away, and it was never found. And so to assume that it wasn't taken away isn't correct to make that assumption. So I would go with what Tiendo said, and that it was taken by the next level. The reason I say that is because T said that Doe was the same soul that had done the Moses task. So in a sense then, he would have that in his computer, in his genetic database that would come through the the combination of the sperm and the egg. But maybe it comes more through the sperm, or what the mind had become. During the last lesson time. So, well, yes, but at first when he met T, he went by the name Herf for a while. I think that was kind of like a nickname it was his middle name, Marshall Herf Applewhite. And so in the book UFO Missionaries Extraordinary, you'll see the interview with Herf and Bonnie. So they weren't using they didn't choose names at that point, or at least for that interview they didn't choose names, because I do know that they took names like Guinea and Pig, and there's another one that was kind of a silly one, but I forget what it was now. So yes, when they met, that's when he started. Well, what Doe said was that he started to separate from the human kingdom about a year before he met T. And at first it was gradual for both of them, but actually T said that she recognized Doe, but Doe didn't recognize T, and T was puzzled by that at first. And they came together kind of over, well, not kind of, but over talk about astrology. Because T had been an astrologer, but I don't think she was working professionally as an astrologer. I think she was like an amateur astrologer. And she would only do somebody's chart if they asked her 3 times, and she didn't tell them that. Because she didn't want to put a lot of effort into something that somebody didn't really want. So I bet she probably didn't charge any money for it, but she might have. I don't know. I don't want to, make up stuff. So the first thing they did is they started a place, a little center called Christian Arts. And it was in the basement of the University of St. Thomas, I think, or it might have been another church that they had some that I think Doe worked at. So that's why I think it was the University of St. Thomas, because he worked there. I believe that was the name of it. And as a choir director at that point. And he was also working for the Houston Opera, probably at the same time as working for the church, directing the choir. But he was singing in the Houston Opera. He was singing lead roles of like Oklahoma and maybe My Fair Lady. I'm not sure which ones. But he did about 7 or 8 different operas, or music, whatever you call it, singing. I guess they're operas. Yeah. But I wanted to get to so they got kicked out of the Christian Arts basement gig because they were talking about things that they didn't want to have talked about in that. They were being, they were willing to explore everything. you know, because T had been into exploring the Theosophists before that, studying them, and Madame Blavatsky's materials and the Ascended Masters materials, and the Mahatma letters, and which came from the English being over in India. A lot of that was stimulated, bringing Christianity to India, and so they found another place, and they started it, and they called it No Place, KNOWPLACE, and that was, I think, more in the country near Houston, where the Christian Arts Center, I think, was more in the city center area. But it might have been the suburbs too. I don't know for sure, but so that from that place, No Place, they were having a lot of problems because their friends were wondering what's going on. Are you guys having an affair? And Doe, began to wonder if T was interested in him, and he wasn't attracted to her vehicle, and he was living with a man. I don't know if at that moment he was living with a man. So he was gay, or maybe he was bi also. It's possible. He didn't try to describe the degrees of his sexuality, but except to say that he was looking for male partners, but the problems he had with the partners he was dating and stuff were that nobody wanted a committed relationship to just one person. And that's what he wanted. So he was even picking up on, being loyal to one. And he did have a good share of male sensuality, or just sensuality, period, of sexuality, and a lot of other experiences that T said were so that he could relate to what all the students would be going through, trying to disconnect from their lives. So he was their example, and that's the same thing that Jesus was. He was showing them by example. And so when he said he overcame the world, he was showing them what they must do in order to keep on moving forward in his kingdom, which is in degrees. It's not for everybody to overcome the world at the same pace, at the same time, although nobody's held back. So some of the students, needed more experience in that overcoming before they were going to get the next level vehicle as a reward for accomplishing the task 100%, or whatever percent was necessary, determined by the next level. And then some that even graduated in 1997, Doe said, would need to come back again to a human condition to have more overcoming lessons. All right. Well, hi. I was back to the chat room. Hi. I was wondering if you were ever a fan of the Art Bell Show. Also, did the group ever listen to Art Bell together? Thanks. Not while I was in the group, but then they did listen to Art Bell when he was in Nevada, when they were based in Nevada. And I guess Art Bell was always in Nevada until he was working with Coast to Coast, which I don't know where their center is. Actually, I think it's in Canada. I think, may be wrong about that, but so they listened to Art Bell when Art Bell was talking about when he had that individual that came on there that was doing some remote viewing, and he said he saw an object outside in the fringe of the solar system. I even remember hearing a news report about an object that was spotted outside the solar system. And while I was in there in 1994, and but I didn't hear that from the Art Bell Show because I don't remember listening to it in 1994. But or three. I mean, we were connected with not the internet, but the bulletin board services and the satellite dishes. I mean, we didn't do any. There was no chatting, of course, on the satellite dishes, but there was chatting on the bulletin board services. Let's see. A fan of Art Bell? Well, yeah. I mean, I heard a few broadcasts, but I haven't gone back to try to listen to them all. So I'm not that. I guess I can't say I'm a fan of him, but I'm not against. I'm not. I don't dislike him. Although I did offer to speak, say something about Tian-Do and the Heaven's Gate group and their view of space aliens and all that, and several times I asked the Coast to Coast people. I sent an email to a number of the managers or the producers of that show, and told them who I was and that I'd be willing to do something with them, and I never got a reply. Well, they didn't. I don't think they ever talked about Heaven's Gate after that, but I may be wrong about that. At the Coast to Coast, I never saw it. I've been getting their feed for years and years. Maybe even 20 years. No, not 20 years. But I usually look at them all. So I get the newsletter they send out, which is a summary of the shows. And I don't really, the same things keep coming up with them. They don't have anything hardly. Sometimes they show a new UFO sighting or something, but to me, the UFO sightings now are they're all either human generated or space alien generated. They're not next level, I don't believe. It's not that it's impossible that it could be next level too. It can be possible. Next level can do what they want to do, but overall, the signs that we're getting aren't the UFO sightings now. Those are now the signs of the beast, the miracles that in Revelation chapter 13 that we're going to be shown to people. The image of the truth. In other words, the imagination of the truth, not the truth. The spiritual view of the truth. The illusion of the truth. That's the image of the truth. Looking at it in that interpretation. Um, so let's see. It was Courtney Brown. Courtney Brown. Oh, yeah, right. Thank you. He was the one that was doing the remote viewing. Art Bell did a show with Rio D'Angelo, but I haven't been able to find the recording of it. And if you do, I'd like to get it, because I have never even thought to look for it. And I knew that he did one with him. And I knew it because Carlin told me about it. And Carlin might have did something with him as well, or maybe Rio did it with Mark. Maybe. Do you remember if anybody else was there? Number 44. With Rio. Oh, you're working the graveyard shift, huh? Yeah, well, I guess I'm in the graveyard shift right now, too. You know what? I never even asked Carla to do that. He's got a blog, I believe. If you can, if you want to get it from him, I'm not. I mean, if I really wanted it bad, I would ask him for it. But Carla and I, we have have had our difficulties, and I don't want to stimulate anything with him. If he wants to talk with me, I'm fine to talk with him about anything, unless I have something to say in particular. I'm not going to probably consult with him on too much. Let's see. Wow, a lot of messages retracted. Okay, so Art Bell did show with, oh, you said that already. Sorry, oh yeah, okay, so I'm up to date on the chat room. You know what, I'm really kind of tired, and I'd like to end before 6 o'clock, so I got 8 minutes. And so I can get a decent night's sleep and try to do some more tomorrow, maybe. So I'm going to close at this point. It's been great to have the opportunity to talk about Tiendo. So adios, amigos.